someone you know is developing extreme fits of rage, do not hesitate to contact your local health officials. Keep your children out of sight. Hide. This is a state of emergency. This message will repeat.
私ね、久しぶりに怯えないで過ごせてるの。
だから言ったでしょ。こんなところ赤ちゃんにいいわけないって。あなたは苦しさから逃れて。
Why are there so many cars outside?
Well, it's a big hotel, and I think there's a gala happening to help with doctors and hospitals with everyone getting sick.
I get so distracted by my anger. The last thing I want is for Kelly to see us like this. I know I've got things to work on, and it's not fair to you, and it's not fair to her. I want us to try to be a family together. It started.
You have to tell me you start feeling different, okay?
그런데 소스티 마와 아무요 나오니.
I wish you could see. It's beautiful.
Are you sick? Are you sick?
And we're back with another edition of Black Fawn Distro's Takeover Tuesday. I'm your host, Benner, and welcoming to the show, writer Derrick Adams. Derrick, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Listen, you took over our Instagram today, and thanks for doing that. I hope you had a lot of fun. We know you got the Hall posters in the background there. We're ready to rock and talk about this awesome film that just dropped on VOD across Canada on all major VOD platforms, as well as iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, we are broadcasting live to YouTube, as well as Facebook Live and our Twitch channel. So wherever you're watching us, thanks for tuning in. And obviously, you can watch the rerun of this interview anytime you want on our YouTube channel as well. So, but hey, listen, man, let's talk about the takeover. Thanks for posting all the behind the scenes photos and photos from around your spot, your creative influences. We're going to get into that a little bit more often, or a little bit more as we go along here. But awesome. Yeah, man, how you doing? Like, what's new?
Oh man, I'm just trying to stay busy. I'm writing and working and getting the film out there, and yeah, it's been a blast.
Awesome. So before we dive in, I just want to let our audience know that, listen, if you're just tuning in, if this is your first time, just to let you know that if you throw your comments down below in the comments section, if you're watching live on Facebook, we can throw them up during the broadcast. So if you got hard-hitting questions for Derrick, we'll throw them up on the screen, and we'll get some answers for you. So please feel free to do that. And also, hey, we might do a giveaway too at the end of this show. Who knows? So if you have a comment, post it up, and you'll be entered into win a quick draw. So let's get into it, man. Let's talk about Hall. This movie just came out at the start of April. It's doing phenomenal. It's getting a great response, and it's obviously got a really cool story behind the film. A lot of people look at this and say, "Oh, it's a pandemic horror. These guys must have filmed it a couple weeks ago," but that wasn't the case. It was actually written before the pandemic, well before the pandemic. Went through the draft process, and then went to camera before the pandemic really took hold of the entire planet. So talk to us a little bit about that, as far as your timeline for kind of when you guys had the script finalized and you went going to camera, and how weird was it to see this horrible tragedy kind of unfold as you're kind of getting ready to kind of release the film?
I mean, it was so surreal, man. Like, like you said, obviously it came out of nowhere, and like I think the writing process started between Adam and Frankie, like maybe in like late 2017, 2018, and I was brought in when I was brought in 2018 is when Frankie and I really started going over the outbreak and the more pandemic angle of this, beginning of an outbreak. And yeah, it was just, like a very like small film. We shot it in a hotel by the airport in the middle of like winter in January in 2019. So it was, yeah, to know that when we finally got to our final cut and we're ready to start shopping it around, we got hit with with COVID. So it kind of made especially a lot of the themes in the movies kind of really stick out in a really real way. And it was a very, very surreal kind of way to look at it. And it's been interesting, and learned a lot from the experience, right? Because so much has changed in the industry because of the pandemic. So having to kind of have to learn on the move and kind of adjust. But it's been very interesting, if anything.
And listen, we're coming out of the pandemic now. Obviously, there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully, like that light's getting a lot brighter, and maybe we'll be back to normal. Maybe later this year, maybe next year. But you guys successfully premiered the film at the world premiere at Fright Fest in England. You also premiered it in Toronto for Canada at the Blood in the Snow Film Festival, where Frankie, the director, took home Best Director honors, which is pretty cool. What's it been like seeing the film kind of slowly, sort of, now that all of that sort of, when is the film going to be completed? How is it coming out? Now that it's kind of getting out to audiences and now it's being released in different territories, how's that experience been for you?
Oh, it's been amazing, man. It's like I like this was like my first project coming on as a writer. So, and I kind of came off of this from just doing like a small short film. So jumping in right into a feature, it was like a super, super quick process. But I'm honestly, I'm still living the dream no matter what, all the hardships and everything. It's just, for me, knowing that hopefully getting the chance, like you said, with things starting to open up now, and getting the chance to really actually experience a live viewing, and getting to maybe hit up like a festival or a movie theater, and getting to see. I'm just, at this point, I get to be excited again. Like that nostalgia of seeing your dream kind of come to life. I get to live it twice, so I'm all for it. Right. I'm having a blast. Yeah.
Awesome. So you think it's kind of lengthened the release process for this film, which is kind of a cool thing that happened, right? So
exactly. That's how I like to look at it. I mean, you have to kind of stay optimistic at these kinds of things, right? So that's just my way of trying to stay optimistic in the moment. And the way I look at it is, we had like you said, we had a really killer premiere at Fright Fest. I mean, I wish I got to go. It would have been awesome. I've loved Fright Fest for so long. But yeah, I'm getting to live it twice. That's how I got to look at it for now, anyway.
Yeah, and let's talk about the film itself as well a little bit, because I think that as being a writer yourself, one of the things that I always talk to screenwriters about is like what's it like writing these characters out. Obviously, this was a collaborative process. You co-wrote the script along with Adam Klodny and as well as Francisco, who kind of helped with the story. And so this is a collaborative process. But at the end of the day, you've got a final script. You've got characters that are engaging. You've got characters that have these really kind of pulling on these really complex themes. But seeing them on the screen, what's that like? And what did you take away from that, seeing you were on set and then seeing the final film? Were you happy with how it turned out, with what you guys written originally?
Oh yeah. So I mean, for one, all the actors involved were so talented and so like stand out all the way around, and for one, that was like the first thing was being on set and watching them act and seeing like a Yumiko who plays Naomi, working like tirelessly and just not have like that, having that no quit kind of energy. And I mean, if you see the film, you see she goes through a lot, and it was a lot of grueling days of just of her having to do that. And it was incredible. And the same thing with Carolina Barchak, who plays Val. She was so good. And Bailey and Julian, Mark, they like, if it wasn't for all their performances and kind of bringing the dialogue to life and bringing these emotions to life, I think is what kind of encapsulates that entire experience. It's that, like, again, that's the nostalgia. Having, it's like a team effort, and you see them and Frankie and all the people behind the scenes who were working tirelessly to kind of get this vision out there. Man, I couldn't have asked for a better experience.
Yeah, and one of the things about, I mean, obviously Francesco was on the on the takeover in the hot seat, so to speak, a couple weeks back, but he said the same thing about the cast and just how, in my perception when I first watched the film as well, was that the performances are so nuanced as far as especially the relationship between Carolina and Mark in the film. Whereas like there's these, it's this layered sort of relationship, even though it's toxic, even though it's bad, and there's these things that you kind of don't see on screen. They're sort of alluded to, and they're just such great actors as far as like interacting with one another and having not necessarily just one emotion, but having to kind of jump from emotion to emotion in different scenes. I thought was pretty phenomenal.
Oh, I 100% agree, and it's funny too because everyone I've watched the movie with is always so ready to say how much of an an ass Brandon or Mark is in the moment, and how he pulls that off. And it's so funny just because when you meet him in real life, he's the sweetest dude. And to me, that was just the funniest, because it goes to show how great of a performance he did, and how well Carolina and Mark really worked off of each other. Like they nailed it. They nailed it.
So this was your first feature film writing credit that you've accomplished, and also this is your second time working with director Francisco Giannini, right? So
it is, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that. How did you guys link up and get involved with one another, and also, I mean, just talking about horror in general, what's drawn you to the genre, and why do you like writing in the genre so much?
Well, to start, I first met Frankie. I think it's probably going on maybe 5 years now. We had like a mutual colleague who I had met on a pilot that a friend of mine had written and created, and she introduced me to Frankie, and we, I also, that was the first time I collaborated with Adam as well, because we co-wrote a short film that called The Fool, and Frankie directed that, and yeah, that was sort of like my first sort of connection with him, and he had called me out of the blue to work on Hall with him, which I'm beyond thankful for, obviously. But in terms of like horror, I've loved horror forever. Like I'm the dude. I was the kid who was afraid of his own shadow, which is kind of ironic given that like now it's almost as if I pull the strings of the shadows,
Mm-hmm.
and so like, but like, there's so many different things, like different aspects of my life. I'm a big believer in like paranormal stuff, and I'm convinced that my house has been haunted since the get-go. So like I've grown up talking to the walls and stuff like that, crying to my parents being a child, and I was also always a writer. I was always writing stories. I would dream and I would write them down, and that still kind of drives my sort of my creativity, is just all that sort of stuff, and yeah, and I fell in love with the genre. Scream too. I watched Scream when I was like 6 or 7, and it terrified me, but I fell in love with it, and I thought it was brilliant, and still think it's brilliant. It's one of my favorites. But like, it was just from then on, I was the kid. I was the kid in like fourth, fifth grade, going to a book sale and buying Stephen King, and
Right.
so it hasn't stopped.
And let's deviate a little bit. But Scream, your thoughts on the new film coming out? I guess Scream 5. People don't really know if it's an actual direct sequel. Now there's some talk that it's going to be a reboot of the franchise, or a rebootquel, but your thoughts on that, sir?
I mean, I'm stoked. I've always, of course, I've got my theories. A good buddy of mine is also a huge fan, and we go back and forth talking about it all the time. And I'm excited. We got the original cast sort of coming back, and we got some new players, and they're all great actors. So the directors too. They did Ready or Not, which was so much fun. So they got a killer team there, and I'm excited. I'm super stoked. I can't wait.
Awesome. Well, just for everyone, just if anyone's just tuning in right now, we're interviewing Derrick Adams here. He's the co-writer of the movie Haul, the new viral zombie flick that just dropped on VOD platforms on April 6th, earlier this month. It's available on Bell, Rogers, MTS, SaskTel, Kojiko, Shaw, TELUS, as well as iTunes, YouTube, and Google Play. So check it out tonight if you can, or this week, rent it on any of those platforms. And as well, you can follow ourselves on Instagram, which is at Black Fawn Distro, just at the bottom of the screen there, as well as you can follow Derrick at Best Derrick Ever. I don't know about that because I've got a couple of buddies named Derrick, and they might challenge you on that. But hey, listen, you've got the Instagram handle. That's where people can follow you. For anyone just tuning in, drop your comments or your questions for Derrick in the comments section below if you're tuning in on Facebook Live, and we'll try and throw them up on the screen, get some answers for you. So, let's just talk about just in general, when we get to the main influences of the film. I know when I watched the film, the audio and the soundtrack played such a pivotal part in sort of the tension that's created in certain scenes, as well as between characters. And I know you're a big music fan as well. Talk to us a little bit about how pivotal music, or what a pivotal role music can play in the creative process as you're writing and coming up with stuff. And talk to us about that, because I know you're a big music guy.
I am. I love music. Like for me, even writing, even when I'm not, I'm always swaying to the music in my head. So for me, even when I'm writing, oftentimes I'll create myself like a soundtrack to the songs or the scores from like different films and TV shows that I kind of feel will hit the vibe. So it's just mostly for me to sort of help structure myself and help and tune in a little bit. And yeah, it's just for me, especially in horror movies, music is so important. It helps with the execution, and it helps kind of like up the ante and get you on the edge of your seat, and to have a good killer track in whether it's a song or just some score, to me, I think it's so important, and I'm always, like I said, like it's essentially my treatment. I always go into writing a script with a treatment, and right after that I'm going in to create a track list, and I feel like I almost write so that I can just randomly create playlists on Spotify to help me get my writing together.
And were there particular artists or soundtracks that you went to when you were kind of like going through the revisions of Hall, or just even like sitting down and reading the drafts? Was there some go-to music you had for that, or?
I was listening to a lot of like scores when it came to Hall, especially. The biggest one I think was, and it's been honestly, it's like a big one in general, but it was Mindhunter, the Netflix show.
Yeah,
I thought the music was it was always so subtle, but it still was moving. And to me, it's always an important factor in music, because kind of when you have a scene between any actor and you want to try and say as few words as possible and let the emotion speak for itself, the music kind of speaks unto that. And I thought when I've watched Mindhunter a few times, and to me, I felt the music kind of helped with that tenfold. So I like that was the one of the things that when I was working with Frankie on the script is that I told him, like, check this out, because I feel like, when we have a horror movie, it's also a movie about characters and emotion. And to me, we would rather have the horror element speak to that than vice versa. So a lot of my music was really directed towards that personally.
And do you have like some favorite scores that you always kind of come back to, as far as like, maybe, I mean, I know probably every project you're starting is sort of like, it's gonna be a different vibe, a different inspiration, but do you have just scores in general that you kind of always find yourself kind of floating back to kind of get inspired?
I honestly, part of my process is I try not to do that. A lot of it of what I try to do is I besides like a few, like maybe, what's it called? And it wasn't even a film soundtrack, but it was just this dark ambient music that I had found on Spotify, and I usually kind of use that to sort of drive me a little bit, and then depending on where the project goes, I'll try and see. But I generally try and keep it relatively fresh with every project I go into. I'm a huge fan of those movies, or those even sequels that often feel very different and almost disconnected from the first one, that kind of stands on its 2 feet. And because I try to be as structured as possible, because I'm a little bit OCD, I often just choose different music. But I mean, there's always scores out there, right? Like I love the music from the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's probably one of my favorites.
Awesome. I'm wearing my Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 t-shirt, the Saws family. This was made by Twisted Teas, so really great company operating out of Southern Ontario too. But I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is like it's probably my all-time favorite horror movie, as far as like,
nice, good choice.
Like I don't know if it has the rewatchability, just because it's such a raw and visceral movie, but I feel it's like maybe the most important horror film ever made. You could make the argument for Halloween, of course, but it's just such a great social commentary and what Tobe Hooper was trying to do. But it's that's a really I gotta listen to that soundtrack again. I can't remember the last time I've listened to it, actually. Probably last time I watched the film, to be honest. But I mean, I love soundtrack. I mean, so just for soundtracks for myself, like I whenever I start to get a lot of stuff done, I always listen to the Social Network soundtrack.
Love the Social.
Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Obviously, I'm a huge Nine Inch Nails fan, but that soundtrack, for some reason, how they built that soundtrack, like when they're in the movie, when they're kind of developing Facebook and all this stuff, but it's like, it's all about like coming up with like the whole I think the first half of the soundtrack is coming up with ideas and making this thing and launching it. And so whenever I put that on, I always feel I get double the work done. But it's like one of my go-tos. But anyway, I digress. But sorry, what's that?
Sorry, I was gonna say, it's funny you mentioned that movie, because I just, like, maybe 3 days ago bought the vinyl soundtrack for the movie. So I'm gonna try that technique out the next time I got to sit at my laptop. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, because it starts off so slow with that first opening song, and then it's like do, and I don't know. I feel like I think about what I'm gonna do for that first song, and then I actually do it. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but try it out, man. Let me know. Maybe we're onto something, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, let's jump into some. We got some audience questions here from everyone that's tuning into the broadcast right now. So let's jump into some of these. Okay. So listen, we got a quick comment from John McIsaac. Always pretty. He's always here, actually, which is great. So, Return of the Living Dead soundtrack for me. Yes, that's a fantastic soundtrack also. And follow-up question from John. He was just saying, what do you think is the most well-written horror movie? Or if that's too hard, maybe something in the top 4 written. So, not to put you on the spot, but
wow. I mean, no, that's a great question. And it's a question being in the industry, you get so often from people who always want to know, and I always find it hard. I mean, because we talked about Scream, so of course I'm biased. I think the first Scream is absolutely brilliant. I think it's what it did for horror movies that were suffering in the 90s. I think that script probably. I mean, I've read the script multiple times, and I think that script is great. I also really like the script for. Or just in general, The Shining was a good one, of course. I mean, I guess that's kind of like a traditional response. But I also read the script for this really small, like more of an independent horror film recently, and I still think it's great. Just the way it was written, it was The Autopsy of Jane Doe, and
Right. Yeah.
and that was a really interesting read because that's a movie that no one, not a lot of people I know had really heard of. So when I jumped into the writing, I think maybe it's because I'm biased and I watched it first, but that was a really good one. Same thing with the chapter one. I had read the original one before the because I know that there was a whole thing and they had an original director and he left, but he had written the script. I read that script literally maybe just a couple of weeks ago, and it was like it was a long one, but that was a good one. But yeah, I think that's mostly most of the scripts that I would say personally spoke to me a lot, like ones where I would like take notes or kind of just fell in love with reading because you can kind of see the visuals or almost even feel them sometimes when you're just reading them, and I think those are the ones that really stuck out to me.
One of the things that I recently heard was with the script for The Witch, and basically one of the things that was in that script was lots of descriptive passages about smells and how the smell of the environment was coming through. So obviously Robert Eggers, the writer director of
Love him. Yeah,
of The Witch and obviously The Lighthouse as well. But that was always I found that like fascinating because it was just and he said in an interview that was something that kind of he always puts in his scripts to kind of puts you in that sort of time and space in order to sort of develop kind of the story and the horror that's happening around it, right? So.
And it's funny because I don't know why I didn't mention The Witch because I literally had bought the script booklet, the book from A24 during the pandemic, and I read through it, and it's that movie itself is insane, and that script kind of speaks true to the authenticity of that. But even the Lighthouse too, there's a couple of those accounts you find on like Instagram where they'll show the clip and have the script reading underneath, and with The Lighthouse you get a lot of like those big dialogue scenes, especially with Willem Dafoe. And man, that script too was incredible. I mean, movie as well. But yeah, I think it's just Robert Eggers in general is just brilliant.
Yeah. I'd always say he's one of the guys that you always want to check out his stuff just because it's just so batshit in the best possible way that you just never know what you're rolling into, right? And they're original concepts, right? They're original stories as opposed to just like kind of remakes and whatever. So let's jump into a couple more questions here. Quick question from Catherine. Derrick, you on? Catherine, that's a yes. Yes, Derrick is on
here,
right
Catherine.
Now. Hope you're tuning in. We've got a tech question here from Orange Hat Film Productions. These are group of up and coming filmmakers making some stuff, but writing software preference. What do you find? Is it Final Draft, something else? What do you find? What do you use?
Right now, I actually use Movie Magic Screenwriter is the one that I'm working on. I had like won a script software like last year, I think. And to me, it kind of has a lot of the same things Final Draft does. So it's suited me well. But you can't really go wrong. I've worked with Final Draft before. They're great. I've heard a lot about. There's one that is specifically for Mac, and the name is escaping me now, but I've heard only amazing things. But yeah, I use Movie Magic Screenwriter, and I would recommend it 100%.
What do you like about that more than Final Draft? Let's say.
I think it's just a little bit. I guess it's like simpler, maybe. I find like when I was logging into Final Draft, that they're always kind of throwing things at me a little bit, and I gotta close box after box to just be like, I want to get to the white page. Whereas Movie Magic Screenwriter was just, I had heard about it previously, and when I was looking just for a script that was more approved by a lot of like Hollywood approved, I guess, when I was still starting out, and this was one of them, and so I was happy to get my chance to win it in like a random Twitter thing. Someone was like, "We're giving this away," and I had the lucky retweet, I guess.
Awesome. And the rest they say is history. That's how.
The rest is history. Yeah.
That's what you've gone and done. Now you got another writer on your hands. So, and a quick question from Rachel. She just got a comment. She loved Hall and thought your writing was brilliant in it. But any tips for writers like up and coming writers trying to get into the industry?
Of course. I mean, the big thing with writing is that I always say is that you're kind of always learning. It's constant. Your every script that you write, you're always going to learn something about how to go about it. So it might be that typical advice, but you just got to keep going. If you get caught up in one project, you could lose yourself. So you keep writing those projects. You never lose sight on your own creativity, and just keep going. Just keep going. You'll always find that one person you need that's going to help push it over and give you exactly what you need. And it's hard work, but and you can, as long as you're willing to do it, it's right there for the taking. So
do you find like so just from your personal experience, like have you I mean writer's block always comes up, right? Especially for writers, obviously for obvious reasons. But do you find it helpful to kind of walk away from a project for a little bit, then come back to it? Just to kind of get a fresh take on. I mean, I always feel that helps sometimes because you look at the same stuff. I 100%
agree.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I think I definitely. Whenever I always say for myself anyway, whenever I'm writing a project and I find myself kind of floating around and getting lost in my head, I'll stop. Whether it's you've gotten down a page, whether you've gotten down two, if you keep going and your heart's not in it, then the words are gonna speak for itself. So, you can find some great like Twitter advice too. There's a really great writer, and he always shares really great advice. And his name is C. Robert Cargill. So if you're ever on Twitter, look him up. He shares really, really great advice. And he always says, don't try and outdo yourself. Just try and get one page a day. And that's what I tell myself. So it's just, if you can get that one page, don't feel like you're wasting your time, because you're not. If you're trying to do it and you have that writer's block or that foggy brain, just don't take it personally and take a walk away, watch something, anything you think you'll do will help you out.
It's kind of like you hear these sort of like these folklore stories from Hollywood with people talking about like, yeah, you know what, we had this idea and we banged out this script in 2 weeks and it's this legendary movie. That's amazing. It happens like that sometimes because you just turn on the faucet and the ideas kind of flow out, but it's rare that happens, right? So, awesome.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it doesn't. I take my time. I think the shortest script I wrote took me like a month, almost 2 months. So like I want to make sure for me personally, it takes me some time. But yeah, you get those writers who dive in and just they'll write all night,
Awesome. So listen, we're for everyone just sticking around, thanks a lot for tuning into the broadcast. Obviously, if you're watching this on repeat, we appreciate you checking it out. And you're watching live on Facebook, Black Fawn Distro's Takeover Tuesday, as well as coming to you on YouTube as well as Twitch. But hey, listen, we do this thing called the rapid fire section. I didn't tell you anything about this because I wanted it to be a surprise. But we do have a rapid fire section of questions. You've taken over our Instagram for the day, and now we're going to take over this interview and put you hit you with some hard-hitting journalistic questions. Are you game for that?
I'm down. Let's do it.
Alrighty. So just to let everyone know, this part of the show is brought to you by our sponsor, which is Wellington Beer. Wellington is our local brewery. So I'm just going to crack this and take a big swig. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Jealous.
Delicious. Hell's Lager. Hell's yeah. They are a local Guelph brewery. They also have a free local delivery in the Kitchener, Guelph, Waterloo area, and you can also hit up their brewery on Woodlawn Road. Here in Guelph, they have an awesome walk-up window that is pandemic-proof. So you can just walk up, you can buy your beer right from a window, and you can walk away with it. So check it out, or you can buy it at your local LCBO. Wellington Brewery, Hell's Lager, Hell's Yeah. So thank you for sponsoring us. They keep us running. Usually during the pandemic, or usually during convention season, which we would be into right now, but they also have kept us running at home during the pandemic. So we appreciate their support and their sponsorship. So let's get into it. Okay, so we've got rapid fire questions. It's really just the first stuff that comes into your head. It's not, and who knows what's going to pop up? But here we go. Ready? All right.
Let's do it.
Rapid fire. Yes or no? When you stay at a hotel, Do you like staying on a high level floor?
Yes.
Interesting. Why?
Yeah. I love the view. I like looking out and seeing the view. I love the cold air. I'm all for it. I love the high in the sky kind of thing.
So I do too. And the reason I ask this question is because of Hall. Obviously, it takes place in a hotel. But I have a friend of mine who says, no. I always stay on the second floor. And I've always asked, like, well, why? And he said, well, what if I need to get out? And that's the logic. But every time he stays, like everywhere you go. But yeah, I guess different strokes for different folks. But I like staying up high as well. And if there's a pool up there, even better, right? So
exactly. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, so next question. You got to pick one. You can pick one horror franchise to survive. The rest disappear forever. Which franchise are you choosing? And I think I know the answer to this, but over to you.
I'm gonna choose Scream. I gotta go with the Scream movies with this one.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And fun fact, I'm broadcasting live from Guelph, the hometown of Nev Campbell. So
very true. Wow. Yeah.
Born and raised, apparently. So okay, so next question. All right. So hey, help us out. You're an avid collector of action figures. Can you tell us the funniest story you've had about collecting, or if you don't have one, can you tell us what your favorite figure in your collection is?
I do have a funny story actually. I've been collecting for a while. I have my dad is the bigger he's got a bunch of series and stuff like that. But for me, he was my dad was a contractor for someone who worked for the toy company that made Furbies. And in like the early, like when they were first starting to come out, his client had gifted him a prototype of the very, very first Furby. And I have it on my shelf, and it was like one like maybe a year before they came out. This was like the one that like tested, wasn't even in contention. And yeah, that to me I think is one of my favorites. I have an old Michael Myers figurine from the original Halloween. I've got some original Star Wars stuff. I've got my little shrine to like the James Wan Conjuring universe that I've got chilling under my my painting of Valak the Nun. So, I've got it all, man. I've got it
all. Awesome. Okay, great. And also, hey, you have those really, really cool Hall figures too. Which can you get those anywhere, or those are one of a kind, or what's the deal?
Those are one of a kind. Again, going back to like my dad, he's been this like a big supporter of the movie. Obviously, I think every day he's telling me about someone else he's told to watch the movie, and I guess just being a parent too, and being a toy collector. So I thought for me that a fun, really cool gift for like that I had done for Christmas was I'm gonna find somebody I can get to custom make them, and I hit up Etsy, and with the help of my sister, shout out to her, and we found somebody who was willing to make them really quick, and yeah, so I got those 3 figures for him, and it's yeah. It was great.
We might have to talk about that. There's a few figures I wouldn't mind having created.
And there's people out there who do it. You just got to find the right person.
I've got so I collect a bunch of stuff as well, and action figures, not professionally or anything, but I pick up stuff that I like all the time. And my favorite figure that I have, I found there's a NECA figure of they ran this ET series. And they have there's an ET figure of the drunk ET. Remember ET gets drunk and he's wearing that flannel shirt, and he looks so hungover. Like the figure looks so hungover that I couldn't stop laughing at it, so I bought it. And I think that's maybe one of my favorite things I've ever purchased. All right. Anyway, enough about ET. But moving on. So rapid fire. Hey, what do you want other than horror? What's a genre that you'd like to tackle in the future as a writer?
Ooh, I would love to tackle. Like my big guilty pleasures are like the coming of age, like teen stories, the ones that kind of deal with like real stuff. And I've had this idea that I almost consider like a passion project that I've been working on for years now, since I was going into high school. So I think that would be the next, which is funny, right? Cause it's not like a big sci-fi thing, but it's just like a small, simple, very character-oriented story, and just stuff like that. I would just like, for me, like that would be my next thing. I always like to add little almost dystopic twists on my things, just to kind of add a little flair. And yeah, but I really want to tell like that coming of age story, and just setting it somewhere fun, or like just something dramatic, something very, very opposite of a horror movie.
Awesome. Okay, we'll be on the lookout for that. So, and then last question. Listen, tell us more without revealing any spoilers. What's your favorite scene in Hall and why?
My favorite scene in Hall is the scene between Naomi and her mother, the hallucination of her mother.
Okay.
In the hotel floor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I saw them, I was there for the day that they shot that, and to me it was just a gripping. And I think Frankie like nailed it. When I saw the daily for that, I was almost brought to tears, because to me it was just so captivating and gripping and emotional. And to me that's still my favorite scene in the movie.
Awesome. Well, that's it. Yeah. That's it. You got your rapid fire. It wasn't too bad, right? It's all it's all for good fun. Again, brought to you by Wellington Brewery, Hell's Lager, Hell's Yeah. Listen, before we go, we're just about to wrap up here, but let's talk about can you make a pitch out there to people who may not have heard of the movie, and are thinking, hey, what's this Hall movie all about, and why should I rent it? What would be your pitch to them?
Well, you've got a lot of different things. You got a lot of different flavors in this one, I would say. You got the elements of horror, you got the suspense, you got the thriller, you got the drama, and now you got a little taste of pandemic, which hopefully is not going to become a long-running joke in the future for movies. But I think if you're somebody who is out there, especially if you're somebody who doesn't like horror movies but always wants to try watching a horror movie, I think this is a great first choice. And I have friends out there who are like, I want to support you, man, but I don't like horror movies. And I said, watch this movie. It'll help you. So that's my little
awesome.
blend
okay,
there.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And what do you got coming up? What do you got coming up next? I know. I know we've got obviously Hall's available now on VOD platforms across Canada, on any major VOD platform you can rent, as well as iTunes, Google Play, and what do you got? What do you have coming up next? Like as far as working projects, I know you can't reveal too much, but you alluded to some of it in your post on today's Instagram takeover. What are you working on next, and what can you tell us about it?
Well, I'm continuing my I got some stuff in the mix. I'm continuing my working relationship with Frankie as well. So my next he was, as we know from the last takeover, that he's been in Italy shooting a film. I wrote the film that he was shooting, a short film, which is not a horror film. So I guess that even goes back to the rapid fire question. But then we do have another horror project that I'm working on now. Again, I can't say too much, but I'm in the middle of drafting it, and Frankie's looking at making it, so we're hoping for the best. And it's a fun one. It's horror again, because it's hard to escape, but it's a fun one. And I can say that music is a big part of it, which is really fun for a first time for me, getting to really incorporate my music choices into it. So it's been a really exciting project to work on. So you can look out for those in the next, hopefully within the next year.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Derrick, thanks again for joining us this week. I think that about does it, right? So, but listen, stick around as we get off the air. We'll just catch up on a couple things before I let you go for the evening. But hey, for anyone tuning in, make sure you check out Hall. It's available through all major VOD platforms across Canada. That includes Bell, Rogers, TELUS, Shaw, Cogeco, MTS, SaskTel, as well as iTunes, YouTube, and Google Play. So you can also follow Derrick on Instagram, which we highly recommend that you do. Your Instagram is great. It's at Best Derrick Ever. And also follow us, Black Fawn Distro, at Black Fawn Distro. So before we go, obviously, we just want to say our 2 cents about what's going on with the pandemic. Listen, stay safe and help out. Wear a mask, wash your hands, practice social distancing, get your vaccine, and listen, check in with your friends and family, most important. We're almost out of the woods here, but if there's people that are having a hard time, it's a difficult time. We're entering like month 14, month 15 now, whatever we're at. So it's been a long haul. we're almost out of the woods, but listen, check in on people, make sure they're doing okay. If they need to talk, make sure you lend an ear. So anyway, Derrick Adams, thanks again for taking over our Instagram today.
Thank
we
you.
really do appreciate you, and obviously, hey, best of luck with the future rollout of Hall across the world. We've got some interesting news coming out soon, I think, for the US, maybe the UK, maybe Japan. We'll see what happens, but keep your eye out for it. And obviously, if you can rent it tonight and you're living in Canada, you're supporting independent film and independent filmmakers, and everyone greatly appreciates it. So thanks again, everyone. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another Takeover Tuesday. I'm your host, Benner from Black Fawn Distro. And Derrick, thanks again. Stick around.
Thank you, guys.
We'll chat, and we'll be off the air soon. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.